Welcome to the Rock is George podcast. I'm your host, George Dionne, and this is episode 84. Thank you for tuning into the podcast, whether it's through our website, rockisgeorge.com, on our YouTube page, through one of the many podcasting streaming apps, or at the loudest.com on the planet, knac.com. My guest for this episode is Janne Stark of MERRYWEATHER STARK Wackerman. This is a new project that was sort of born out of an old project. Janne Stark had a band with Neil Merryweather called MERRYWEATHER Stark, and it morphed into this MERRYWEATHER Stark Wackerman. You're going to find out why during the interview. Their debut album, Cosmic Effect, came out on November 11th through Metalville Records. Unfortunately, Neil Merryweather passed away after a battle with cancer before the album's release. Janne is going to talk a bit about his friendship with Neil and recording music together. So here is Janne Stark of MERRYWEATHER Stark Wackerman. If I knew absolutely nothing about MERRYWEATHER Stark and Wackerman, how would you describe the band's music to me?
70s influenced blues-based hard rock with some cool riffs.
I'd say that's an accurate assessment of your album Cosmic Effect, which is ready to come out on November 11th through Metalville Records. Some sad news with the release is that Neil Merryweather passed shortly after recording the album, so the album kind of acts as a eulogy to Neil. You were able to finish the album after his passing with the blessing of his girlfriend. And why don't you talk a little bit about how you met Neil and your friendship together?
It actually started when I recorded a bunch of albums with a project called Mountain of Power, which is kind of my tribute to the more or less obscure 70s bands that I grew up with, like Captain Beyond, Stray Dog, and Sir Lord Baltimore, and Neil was one of them. And I was going to record a cover of his song Kryptonite, and I found him on Facebook and got in touch with him, and because I wanted to record. What I do sometimes is I record like two songs and I merge them together. So I wanted to record Kryptonite and Give It All You Got, and I contacted Neil and asked him if it was okay that I did that, and he said, "Yeah, sure, great." And I sent him a demo of the song, and he really liked it. And he said, well, if you need any help, just to let me know if you would need any vocals or anything. And I was also recording covers of Canadian guitar player Walter Rossi and his old band Charlie. And I didn't have any singer for that song. And I actually hadn't really heard Neil's vocals since, what he did back in the 80s. So I checked a bit online, and I found he's actually recorded some stuff for the project called 100 Watt Head. Which wasn't that long ago, and his vocals were still awesome. So I asked him if he wanted to lay down some vocals for that song, and he said, "Yeah, I'd love to." He actually had been at home for several years because his wife had recently, it's like 6 months before this, she'd passed away from cancer, and he'd been at home with her, and he had kind of got out of the music business. So he thought there was like a good recreational thing to kind of record vocals for this song, and he did, and he did an outstanding job. And he said, well, this was really fun. Do you have like any original material? So and I was actually working on a bunch of stuff, so I sent him a song, and like just a couple of weeks later he'd written lyrics and recorded vocals for that song, and sent it to me. So what do you think of this? And it was like, yeah. And then we started working on an album together, and that project was called MERRYWEATHER Stark. We ended up we did two albums with MERRYWEATHer Stark, and when we did the second album, I was coming over to visit Neil in Las Vegas in 2019 when we were recording the drums for the second album. Or actually, I was coming over, so we were gonna finish writing the album and record the drums, and we actually did that in like 3 days. We had a guy named Michael Maisonette, fantastic drummer. So he came in Neil's studio and recorded the drums in 2 days. So I was going to be there for 2 weeks. So we had a lot of time left. So and Neil had been invited to a local studio called Skeleton Key to visit the studio. So we went there and we checked it out, and we met the guy who had the studio, Bobby Ferrari. He was a really nice guy, and there was drums set up in the studio, and he said, well, it's this guy that I'm using on some recordings, John Wackerman. Oh, actually, he didn't say his name. Guy that I'm using on some recordings. Then John came in and he introduced himself, and he said, I'm John Wackerman. I was like, Wackerman, are you related to Chad Wackerman? Played with Frank Zappa and all these guys. Yeah, it's my brother. Wow. And Brooks from Avenged Sevenfold was his younger brother. And he himself, he'd played with Lindsey Buckingham, and he'd just been doing like a TV show. He was the band leader and drummer for, I think it was called the Ron Reagan Show on TV. And he just finished that, and he was kind of didn't have any band or anything. And so he was a really nice guy, and we chatted along, and he said, well, why don't you come over for dinner sometime this week? So visited him on Friday, him and his wife, and Bobby from the studio was there as well. And we had a really nice evening, lots of good food, and not too much alcohol. And so then we was sitting there chatting around and talking about, we had so many like a lot of common ground regarding bands that we grew up with and that we liked. And I mean, when we were at John's house, he showed us like John Bonham's snare drum, which he got, and the snare drum that can't remember the name of the drummer with Frank Zappa. We recorded the Black Page, and had a
Terry Bozzio.
Yeah, Bozzio. That's right. And he actually had the sheet music for the song on the drum itself, and he had a like really great collection of snare drums and stuff. And then Bobby said, well, the studio is free this weekend if you want to come in and jam. And we said, yeah, that'd be great. So and we didn't have any. We really just thought we'd go in and jam some and see what, just for fun. And Bobby said, well, we'd better like set up for recording just in case you come up with something. So yeah, okay. And I didn't have any guitar with me at all. So a friend of mine, Mike Varney, used to run Shrapnel Records. He's a friend of mine and lives in Las Vegas as well. So he came over with the guitar that I could borrow. So we went in on the Saturday, and Neil had an idea that he had been like working on before, but nothing happened from it. So we started fooling around with it, and suddenly we'd recorded a song. And then I had an old idea that I had been working on for some time, and that never like became anything. And then suddenly I had 2 songs. So on the Saturday we wrote and recorded 3 songs, and on the Sunday we did 4 songs. And then Bobby said, well, the studio is free Monday morning as well if you want to come in and like do 2 or 3 more songs, and you have a whole album. So we said, yeah, we'll do that. And we actually did 3 more songs on the Monday. I mean, some of the stuff I actually sat in Neil's sofa in the morning before we were going to the studio with an acoustic guitar, just trying to find some riffs that I could like present or we could do something with. So it was, I mean, it's one of the most organic recordings that I ever done with a band, where you just come in and have nothing when you get into the studio, and 3 days later you have 10 songs. So it was really fantastic experience.
Mike Varney from Shrapnel, was he just part of the studio, or he just happened to be there? Is it just somebody you called up for a guitar?
No, he's a friend of mine and Neil's, a mutual friend. And every time that I go to the US or I go to Las Vegas, I always bring a bunch of CDs because we trade CDs. He's a music collector like me, and he's always into a lot of the Swedish 70s stuff and stoner rock and that kind of stuff. And he's always got these really cool bands as well. So we do a lot of trading. And usually when I come over, one of the first times I was there, Neil was with me as well, and he kind of fell asleep on the sofa because he thought we were so boring, just talking about bands and listen to this riff here and listen to that there. So the next time I was going over to Neil's, he said, "You go by yourself. I'll just leave the door open and you can come in when I come back.
Are you planning on releasing any music videos for the new album?
There will be 3 videos. Unfortunately, we never got to record any like proper videos. So they will just be like lyric videos and with some photos and stuff as well. Since this wasn't really a planned album, we didn't do any photo sessions or anything like that. Actually did record a video of one of the songs that we recorded, but I put my phone on a chair and I put it on record and we started playing and it fell over. So it's just like showing the roof or actually our necks. I mean, when we recorded, we did what we did there that weekend was kind of write the songs and we got the drums all down. And I mean, there were no click tracks, nothing like that. So the drums were what they were. And so I brought the recordings home with me and I just re-recorded some of the guitars. And I also recorded, because Neil, he recorded bass, but he didn't really like put his heart into it because he knew he was going to re-record the bass after. So I just recorded some rough bass just to have something to work with. And then I sent the songs to Neil, and he wrote the lyrics and recorded the vocals and everything in his studio. And then I was supposed to come over, or we were going to just finish it up. And it was actually going to get into the studio, to Bobby's studio, to record the bass. But then when COVID came, I mean, he didn't, since he I mean, he was 74 at the time, and he didn't really want to go out and among people and stuff, and he wanted to wait it out. So he never got around to recording the bass because he wanted to do it in Bobby's studio. But he recorded the vocals in his own studio, and then he started having problems with his eyesight, and he sent me a message saying that he could write on the phone, but he couldn't read what he had written. So then we thought that something was wrong. So I told him to go see a doctor because could it be diabetes or something, could affect your eyes. And then he did, and I found out that he had a brain tumor. So that was really really tough.
I would imagine so.
Yeah.
You guys had worked in the past before with MERRYWEATHER STARK. You did Rock Solid in 2020 and Carved in Rock in 2018. Did you guys always kind of record on the fly, or was this current project kind of the first time you just jammed and said, let's record it?
This one was totally different from the first 2 albums. I mean, the MERRYWEATHER STARK albums. On the first album, most of the songs I wrote the music. I recorded like the basic demo for the song, and I sent it over to Neil, and he recorded some vocals. And like sometimes he'd cut and paste and move a part, or maybe say that, well, this midsection here would work better as a chorus. So, and then he'd like cut and paste, and then he'd send it back to me, and I'd re-record the stuff. And then when like the song was written and finished, I'd send the files to Peter on the first album, the drummer that I used on the first album, and he recorded the drums. And then I got the stuff back, and I re-recorded some of the guitars to fit better with his drums. So that was like I mean, like most of the albums are recorded these days, sending files back and forth. But I mean, the MERRYWEATHER STARK Wackerman album, that was like we did back in the 70s and early 80s. We just get in the studio together and you feed off each other, and you kind of, oh, that was cool, maybe we should do like this, and then change around a bit and record one version. Oh, I did a slightly mess up there, and maybe you should do it again. And we did like, I think we did like 3 or 4 takes of each song. I mean, that's really rare that you do that today. So it was kind of fun getting back to that feeling.
Did you and Neil ever tour on the previous material?
No, we didn't. We actually planned on trying to do it, but I mean, I'm over in Sweden and he was in Las Vegas, and we talked about it, but it never really got to that point. And I mean, I'm also been busy with other bands and stuff over here. But if we had found like a booking agent or something that would have been interested in working with the band, maybe something would have happened. And we talked about at least playing in Las Vegas, but I mean, since both me and on the first album, both me and the drummer were over here in Sweden. On the second album, we did talk about it, but I mean, we never really got around to it before all the shit hit the fans. So.
You mentioned that you work with other Swedish bands, and that's kind of an understatement because you have a lot of projects. You're a very, very busy musician. I noticed one of the projects that you have is Bandolier Kings, and you recently released Volume 2, Time to Remember. This is sort of a tribute to BUDGIE, which wasn't a huge band over here in the US, but from what I understand overseas, they were kind of one of the bigger, more influential bands out overseas.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that they were big, but they were definitely influential. And they did tour quite a lot in Scandinavia and in Europe. And I mean, they were around. I mean, even KK Downing from Judas Priest says he's one of his like early favorite bands, and Judas Priest even opened up for Budgie back in like 1971 or 72. And I mean, you see that Metallica has paid tribute to them, and Megadeth, and a lot of bands. So they were definitely one of the early, like really heavy rock bands, and they influenced a lot of bands. And back in 1975, I had my first band called TNT, and we recorded a demo, and we did a cover already back then of Napoleon Bonaparte. Back then my English wasn't that good, and neither was our singer's English. So we tried to try. I mean, it's hard even today to try to transcribe the lyrics of Burke Shelley, because the lyrics are kind of weird and is not really like you can't hear every word that he's saying. And it's I actually, when I did the first Bandolier Kings album, I sent Burke was alive, and I sent him a message asking him to send the lyrics, and just no, he didn't want to send the lyrics. It didn't want to publish the lyrics anywhere. So actually, I got some of the other members of the band. They helped me a bit, so I sent them the lyrics. So I tried to transcribe them. I sent them the lyrics, and they said, "Oh, it's that word there and that word there, but otherwise it's fine." So because he wanted to be kind of a secret guy when it came to the lyrics. And I mean, if you have a song called "Hot as a Docker's Armpit" or "New Disintegrating Parachutist Woman," then I mean, the lyrics are kind of out there.
I think rock and roll is steeped in secrecy, but with the internet, it's so tough to keep a secret these days now. But you mentioned one of your early bands, TNT, but you had another early band called Overdrive that you're celebrating a 42nd anniversary with because COVID ruined the 40th anniversary. So you put out some
Yeah.
reissues of earlier albums and Live in the Raw in 1981. So if you kind of want to talk a little bit about Overdrive and kind of what's hitting today as far as Overdrive is concerned.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, we formed the band in 1980. It's kind of funny how we formed the band, because back then I was playing in a band called Paradise, and we were like an AOR pump rock band. We played covers of like REO Speedwagon, Styx, that kind of style. And two of the other guys that were in the band, they were like our local heroes called Ocean, and they were more like traditional rock / hard rock. We had a local rock club called Rockslaget, which would translate to the Battle of Rock. We had like a magazine that we did, like a fanzine, and the guy who ran the fanzine said, "Oh, there's this new thing called the New Wave of British Heavy Metal. You should write something about that." And I mean, I saw Iron Maiden open up for Kiss in 1980 in Sweden, and I was totally into that whole genre and era. So me and the drummer from Ocean got together to write this article about the bands, because he was a big collector as well and a big fan. And when we sat there and like writing about bands and talking back and forth, and we said, well, we should form a heavy metal band. There should be a Swedish heavy metal band as well. So that night there, we formed Overdrive. And the name actually came from the song Overdrive by Riot, which was one of my favorite bands back then. So we were formed in 1980, and we did first we did a demo with 2 songs. We tried to get a deal, and Virgin Records in the UK were actually interested in us, but we took some time to. Back then, it wasn't that easy to like record as it is today, so we had to get into the studio and stuff. And then we recorded a self-financed 5-track EP that we released ourselves called Reflections. And then we got a deal with Planet Records and did 2 albums, Metal Attack and Swords and Axes, 1983 and 84. And then we lost our singer. He was actually, back then it was like, so who's going to sing? Well, not me. Oh, okay, I'll sing then. But he really wanted to play bass, so he actually quit the band. We had problems finding a singer back then, so the band actually folded in 1985. And then we did a couple of like reunions, and then in 2003 we did another reunion, and suddenly we got offers to play festivals, and we got a record deal, and the original singer was actually playing bass in an AC/DC cover band. He said, "Oh, whoa! I don't want to do this. I want to play bass, so I'm gonna get." So we found a new singer, Perilos, who's also is the singer of the band Portraits. He was born the same year that we released our first EP, but he stepped in, and 2 weeks later we played a festival in Germany, and it went great, and so we went on from there. So, and then we figured. We recorded, released Let the Metal Do the Talking. We did the Angel Maker album, Angel Maker's Daughter. We did an EP called Resurrected. But then the past couple of years, we've all of us have been like busy with other bands and projects, and Overdrive has been kind of on the back burner. We've done 1 gig here and 1 there. So we figured, we'll do a 40th anniversary year with farewell shows, and then we'll just put the band to rest. And then COVID happened, and but one good thing was actually that we get to rehearse a lot during these 2 years. So I think the shows that we've done this year, our farewell shows, has been kind of the best shows we've done ever. So we have a lot of people saying, "Oh, you can't quit now. You sound better than ever."
Well, Zoom is giving me the 5-minute countdown. I could talk to you forever for all the projects that you have going on, and I will direct people to your website to find out all the things that you're currently working on. The album MERRYWEATHER STARK and Wackerman, Cosmic Effect, is out on November 11th, Metalville Records. Sounds fantastic. I wish you the best of luck on it.
Thank you.
Once again, I want to thank Janne Stark of MERRYWEATHER STARK Wackerman for coming on the Rock is George podcast. Be sure to check out their latest album, Cosmic Effect, out now on Metalville Records. Head over to your favorite music streaming app. If you like what you hear, go out and buy a physical copy. Support the artist. For all things Janne Stark, head over to his website, jannestark.com. Janne has his hands full with plenty of bands and projects that you're sure to enjoy. He was a former member of Grand Design. He currently has a band called Constantia. He's written several books, including the Encyclopedia of Swedish Hard Rock and Heavy Metal, which had 3 volumes. He's quite the prolific man between music and writing, so be sure to check out all that he has to offer. I also want to thank Nathan T. Burke of Metalville Records for making this interview possible. You've been great. I've been George Dionne. I'll see you again soon.